To discuss how we deal with this trauma and what we can do to prevent recurrences, I'm joined now by child psychologist Clare Rowe. Clare, this is perhaps the most heinous case we've seen for a long while, but angry, violent men who have threatened or perpetrated violence before, killed all too often. What are the warning signs here, and what can we do as a society to intervene and prevent this?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I think some of those words that you were just using there in your introduction, thank you very much. I think just really, I don't think there's any words. I think everyone struggled, the media, individuals today around their workplaces, to grapple to. I mean, the word tragedy just, it doesn't seem to cut it. It's horrific and a monstrous crime, and I think. At the very heart of it is exactly what you've pointed out, that this is not natural. It's not the way of things. It goes against every natural biological drive and instinct that we have for the rational person. And so it is incomprehensible to the public how someone could take the lives of their own offspring. It is unbelievable. So these matters, as you said, are complex before the family court. I have been, on your show, Chris, before, stating that people can make false allegations of violence in the family court. So it becomes an incredibly complex matter. But one thing, as you said, is vitally clear, that custody battles and the family court and separation cannot and should not be ever held in any way responsible or any explanation for murder, and a monstrous murder at that. So it does let us take stock of the situation and perhaps say, is there a better way we can be doing things? Because it has to stop. And we have an epidemic in this country, and we hear about it week in, week out as wives and children are murdered. And we are working within a court system, in my opinion, which is not set up to quickly come in, assess these cases and act. It is a slow system, and frustrations build, and we need to be on alert for these people. As you said, even the threat of violence, we have to assume the worst, and we have to get in and intervene, act and protect people. And so whilst there is absolutely, in my mind, no causality for the illegal actions of an individual just because they're going through this separation and perhaps, I don't know these circumstances, but perhaps weren't able to have contact with their children for a while. It does, tragic incidents like this, we have to reflect and say, what else can we do? And we have to keep trying.
Now, you're involved in this, as you say, in your practice. You get involved in child custody battles and the like. There is a sense of an epidemic. There is a sense that there is more of this happening. Do the statistics bear this out, these crimes and violence against women and children?
Well, they do, and they're certainly not, statistics are showing that it's certainly not decreasing, and that is despite the enormous publicity, really, that domestic violence gets. And I know people state that it should get more, and I'm certainly one of those. Whilst it's still happening, we should continue to talk about it. We should be screaming it from the rooftops. It should be a front page everyday item. But, it does get publicity. We are increasing awareness out of it, but it's not reflective in the statistics that's slowing down. Now, certainly it does show that domestic violence has been on the increase for 20 to 30 years. One could argue that perhaps awareness is encouraging people to come forward regarding their own home situations, and in the past they may have put up with them. But all in all, the frustration is there, and the anger, and certainly the anger from the general public, that within domestic violent days and white ribbon days and all these token events, things are not changing.
It's very hard for us to comprehend someone harming their own children. What's the psychology behind this? Are they harming children in order to inflict pain on their partner? Is that the motivation? Not specifically in this case, I should add, but we're talking generally in these types of cases?
Yeah, look, generally in these types of cases, I think there can be a multitude of motivations. And at the end of the day, I mean, this is a heinous, monstrous, violent murderer. And so when we're looking at that, we might as well kind of, second guess, well, what are the motivations of, any other kind of crime of that magnitude? And it is complete and utter irrationality and incomprehensible to anyone to even fathom to have a reason. And I certainly don't want to make it sound like any reasons are good enough for this type of act.
Exactly. Well, just on that point, I wanted to raise that because we're both. I mean, there are issues involved that are going to be raised all the time, but they can never be raised as any sort of mitigating circumstance for this sort of heinous act. And that's why I want to show you something that the Queensland police officer Mark Thompson said just an hour ago in Queensland when referring to the investigation and appealing for information from all sides on this case. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
To put it bluntly, there are probably people out there in the community that are deciding which side, so to speak, to take in this investigation. Is this an issue of a woman suffering significant domestic violence and her and her children perishing at the hands of the husband, or is this an instance of a husband being driven too far by issues that he's suffered by certain circumstances into committing acts of this form?
Queensland Police said. Now, I should add, Claire, that he was asked about this later and he clarified his comments, meaning he was just wanting people with evidence regarding the state of mind of either the mother or the father in this case. But it concerns me, and I'm certain we'll hear much more debate about this, as to ever even suggest that somebody could be pushed into a heinous crime like this.
Yes, it's not the actions of any other level-minded individual, and so we cannot say that. And I work, Chris, daily with parents, mothers and fathers who have been completely alienated from their children, have no contact whatsoever, and it would just not be something that would ever enter their mind to do to harm them. I mean, as you stated, a natural order of things means that our love for our children is, all-encompassing and enduring, and means that we cannot have contact them with a period of time, and we certainly don't think about harming them. Certainly in previous cases, we think that the motivation of such individuals like that has been a revenge, out of spite, a attack on the former spouse who they think has wronged them. I would dare say that if there is a history of domestic violence with this family, there are serious control issues, and that may have exhibited itself in that relationship previously, and that at the point of feeling like, as a perpetrator, he was losing control. This was the ultimate act of control to show that he had control over everyone ultimately in the end.
Claire,
but it is an act of a murderer.
Yeah, and the most heinous murderer imaginable. Just finally, Claire, I wonder if you can help us out with this. I know I've been running around the last 24 hours switching off radios and getting rid of newspaper websites because I don't want my young children to read about this story. What should we do with our children at various ages and helping them to deal with such disturbing news?
Yes, and I feel like we've had a bit of a summer of disturbing news of different events, and it's been very, very difficult. I think you have to look absolutely developmentally. I don't see any positive outcomes or reasons to actively tell children or let them hear about this for primary school age children, especially children under the age of 10. If they hear about it from peers and you need to tell them, or in fact for older children, I advise parents to tell them in a very calm way. Children will always look to parents to see if they are okay in a situation. So telling them in a heightened emotional manner is only going to increase their anxiety. You want to tell them quite minimal and wait for their responses, wait for their cues, see if they've got questions. So you want to be able to answer questions to an age-appropriate level, but not prompt questions in them, I suppose, and know that this might be an ongoing conversation for them. They may pop back in a day or two or even weeks if something pops back into their mind. So you want it age appropriate, you want minimal information, you want it quite matter of fact and calm as you state it. And yes, I agree, I wouldn't leave it up to the schoolyard or media reports of other things for young children certainly to find out about this.
Claire, thanks so much for joining us again.
Thanks, Chris.